Sexual Personae. Chapter 1. Page 7. Sex and Violence, or Nature and Art. Female tragic protagonists are rare. Tragedy is a male paradigm of rise and fall, a graph in which dramatic and sexual climax are in shadowy analogy. Climax is another Western invention. Traditional Eastern stories are picaresque, horizontal chains of incident. There's little suspense or sense of an ending, the sharp vertical peaking of Western narrative, as later of orchestral music, is exemplified by Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, whose moment of maximum intensity Aristotle calls peripeteia, reversal. Western dramatic climax was produced by the agon of male will. Through action to identity. Action is the root of escape from nature, but all action circles back to origins, the womb-tomb of nature. Oedipus, trying to escape his mother, runs straight into her arms. Western narrative is a mystery story, a process of detection. But since what is detected is unbearable, every revelation leads to another repression. The major women of tragedy, Euripides' Medea and Phaedra, Shakespeare's Cleopatra and Lady Macbeth, Racine's Phaedra, skew the genre by their disruptive relation to male action. Tragic woman is less moral than man. Her will to power is naked. Her actions are under a Chthonian cloud. They are a conduit of the irrational, opening the genre to intrusions of the barbaric force that drama shut out at its birth. Tragedy is a Western vehicle for testing and purification of the male will. The difficulty in grafting female protagonists onto it is a result not of male prejudice, but of instinctive sexual tragedies. Woman introduces untransformed cruelty into tragedy because she is the problem that the genre is trying to correct. Tragedy plays a male game, a game it invented to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. It is not a flawed choice, flawed action, or even death itself, which is the ultimate human dilemma. The gravest challenge to our hopes and dreams is the messy biological business as usual that is going on within us and without us at every hour of every day. Consciousness is a pitiful hostage of its flesh envelope, whose surges, circuits, and secret murmurings it cannot stay or speed. This is the Chthonian drama that has no climax, but only an endless round, cycle upon cycle. Microcosm mirrors macrocosm. Free will is stillborn in the red cells of our body, for there is no free will in nature. Our choices come to us prepackaged and special delivery, molded by hands not our own. Tragedy's inhospitality to women springs from nature's inhospitality to man. The identification of woman with nature was universal in prehistory. In hunting or agrarian societies, dependent upon nature, femaleness was honored as an immanent principle of fertility. As culture progressed, crafts and commerce supplied a concentration of resources, freeing men from the caprices of weather or the handicap of geography. With nature at one remove, femaleness receded in importance. Buddhist cultures retained the ancient meanings of femaleness long after the West renounced them. Male and female, the Chinese yang and yin, are balanced and interpenetrating powers in man and nature, to which society is subordinate. This code of passive acceptance has its roots in India, a land of sudden extremes where a monsoon can wipe out 50,000 people overnight. The femaleness of fertility religions is always double-edged. the Indian nature goddess Kali, is creator and destroyer, granting boons with one set of arms while cutting throats with the other. She is the lady ringed with skulls. The moral ambivalence of the great mother goddesses have been conveniently forgotten by those American feminists who have resurrected them. We cannot grasp nature's bare blade without shedding our own blood. Western culture from the start has swerved from femaleness. The last major Western society to worship female powers was Minoan Crete, and significantly that fell and did not rise again. The immediate cause of its collapse, quake, plague, or invasion, is beside the point. The lesson is that cultic femaleness is no guarantee of cultural strength or viability. What did survive, what did vanquish circumstance and stamp its mindset on Europe, was Mycenaean warrior culture, descending to us through Homer. The male will to power. Mycenaeans from the south and Dorians from the north would fuse to form Apollonian Athens, from which came the Greco-Roman line of Western history. Both the Apollonian and Judeo-Christian traditions are transcendental, that is, they seek to surmount or transcend nature. Despite Greek culture's contrary Dionysian element, which I will discuss, high classicism was an Apollonian achievement. Judaism, Christianity's parent sect, is the most powerful of protests against nature. The Old Testament asserts that a father God made nature and that differentiation into objects and gender was after the fact of his maleness. Judeo-Christianity, like Greek worship of the Olympian gods, is a sky cult. It is an advanced stage in the history of religion, which everywhere began as earth cult, veneration of fruitful nature. The evolution from earth cult to sky cult shifts woman into the nether realm. Her mysterious procreative powers, and the resemblance of her rounded breasts, belly, and hips to Earth's contours, put her at the center of early symbolism. She was the model for the great mother figures who crowded the birth of religion worldwide. But the mother cults did not mean social freedom for women. On the contrary, as I will show in a discussion of Hollywood in the sequel to this book, cult objects are prisoners of their own symbolic inflation. Every totem lives in taboo. Woman was an idol of belly magic. She seemed to swell and give birth by her own law. From the beginning of time, woman has seemed an uncanny being. Men honored but feared her. She was the black maw that spat him forth and would devour him anew. Men, bonding together, invented culture as a defense against female nature. Sky cult was the most sophisticated step in this process, for its switch of the creative locus from earth to sky is a shift from belly magic to head magic. And from this defensive head magic has come the spectacular glory of male civilization, which has lifted woman with it. The very language and logic woman uses to assail patriarchal culture were the invention of men. Hence, the sexes are caught in a comedy of historical indebtedness. Man, repelled by his debt to a physical mother, created an alternate reality, a heterocosm, to give him the illusion of freedom. Woman, at first content to accept man's protections, but now inflamed with desire for her own illusory freedom, invades man's systems and suppresses her indebtedness to him as she steals them. By head magic, she will deny there ever was a problem of sex and nature. She has inherited the anxiety of influence. The identification of woman with nature is the most troubled and troubling term in this historical argument. Was it ever true? Can it still be true? Most feminist readers will disagree, but I think this identification not myth, but reality. All the genres of philosophy, science, high art, athletics, and politics were invented by men. but by the Promethean law of conflict and capture, woman has a right to seize what she will and to vie with man on his own terms. Yet, there is a limit to what she can alter in herself and in man's relation to her. Every human being must wrestle with nature, but nature's burdens fall more heavily on one sex. With luck, this will not limit woman's achievement, that is, her action in male-created social space, but it must limit eroticism, that is, our imaginative lives in sexual space, which may overlap social space, but is not identical with it. Nature's cycles are woman's cycles. Biologic femaleness is a sequence of circular returns, beginning and ending at the same point. Woman's centrality gives her a stability of identity. She does not have to become, but only to be. Her centrality is a great obstacle to man, whose quest for identity she blocks. He must transform himself into an independent being, that is, a being free of her. If he does not, he will simply fall back into her. Reunion with the mother is a siren call haunting our imagination. Once there was bliss, and now there is struggle. Dim memories of life before the traumatic separation of birth may be the source of Arcadian fantasies of a lost golden age. The Western idea of history as a propulsive movement into the future, a progressive or providential design, climaxing in the revelation of a second coming, is a male formulation. No woman, I submit, could have coined such an idea, since it is a strategy of evasion of woman's own cyclic nature, in which man dreads being caught. Evolutionary or apocalyptic history is a male wish with a happy ending, a phallic peak. Woman does not dream of transcendental or historical escape from natural cycle, since she is that cycle. Her sexual maturity means marriage to the moon, waxing and waning in lunar phases. Moon, month, menses, same word, same world. The ancients knew that woman is bound to nature's calendar, an appointment she cannot refuse. The Greek pattern of free will to hybris, to tragedy, is a male drama, since woman has never been deluded until recently by the mirage of free will. She knows there is no free will, since she is not free. She has no choice but acceptance. Whether she desires motherhood or not, nature yokes her into the brutal, inflexible rhythm of procreative law. Menstrual cycle is an alarming clock that cannot be stopped until nature wills it. Woman's reproductive apparatus is vastly more complicated than man's, and still ill understood. All kinds of things can go wrong or cause distress in going right. A Western woman is in an agonistic relation to her own body. For her, biologic normalcy is suffering, and health and illness. Dysmenorrhea, it is argued, is a disease of civilization, since women in tribal cultures have few menstrual complaints. But in tribal life, woman has an extended or collective identity. Tribal religion honors nature and subordinates itself to it. It is precisely in advanced Western society, which attempts to improve or surpass nature and which holds up individualism and self-realization as a model, that the stark facts of woman's condition emerge with painful clarity. The more woman aims for personal identity and autonomy, the more she develops her imagination, the fiercer will be her struggle with nature, that is, with the intractable physical laws of her own body, and the more nature will punish her. Do not dare to be free, for your body does not belong to you. The female body is a Chthonian machine, indifferent to the spirit who inhabits it. Organically, it has one mission: pregnancy, which we may spend a lifetime staving off. Nature cares only for species, never individuals. The humiliating dimensions of this biologic fact are most directly experienced by women, who probably have a greater realism and wisdom than men because of it. Woman's body is a sea, acted upon by months' lunar wave motion. Sluggish and dormant, her fatty tissues are engorged with water, then suddenly cleansed at hormonal high tide. Edema is our mammalian relapse into the vegetable. Pregnancy demonstrates the deterministic character of woman's sexuality. Every pregnant woman has body and self taken over by a Chthonian force beyond her control. In the welcome pregnancy, this is a happy sacrifice, but in the unwanted one, initiated by rape or misadventure, it is a horror. Such unfortunate women look directly into nature's heart of darkness. For a fetus is a benign tumor, a vampire, who steals in order to live. The so-called miracle of birth is nature getting her own way. Every month for women is a new defeat of the will. Menstruation was once called the curse, a reference to the expulsion from the garden, when woman was condemned to labor pains because of Eve's sin. Most early cultures hemmed in menstruating women by ritual taboos. Orthodox Jewish women still purify themselves from menstrual uncleanliness in the mikveh, a ritual bath. Women have borne the symbolic burden of man's imperfections, his grounding in nature. Menstrual blood is the stain, the birthmark of original sin, the filth that transcendental religion must wash from man. Is this identification merely phobic, merely misogynistic, or is it possible that there is something uncanny about menstrual blood, justifying its attachment to taboo? I will argue that it is not menstrual blood per se which disturbs the imagination, unstanchable as that red flood may be, but rather the albumin in the blood, the uterine shreds, placental jellyfish of the female sea. This is the Chthonian matrix from which we rose. We have an evolutionary revulsion from slime, our site of biologic origins. Every month it is woman's fate to face the abyss of time and being, the abyss, which is herself. The Bible has come under fire for making woman the fall guy in man's cosmic drama. But in casting a male conspirator, the serpent, as God's enemy, Genesis hedges and does not take its misogyny far enough. The Bible defensively swerves from God's true opponent, Chthonian nature. The serpent is not outside Eve, but in her. She is the garden and the serpent. Anthony Storr says of witches, at a very primitive level, all mothers are phallic. The devil is a woman. Modern emancipation movements discarding stereotypes, impeding a woman's social advance, refuse to acknowledge procreation's daemonism. Nature's serpentine, a bed of tangled vines, creepers and crawlers, probing dumb fingers of fetid organic life, which Wordsworth taught us to call pretty. Biologists speak of man's reptilian brain, the oldest part of our upper nervous system, killer survivor of the archaic era. I contend that the premenstrual woman incited to snappishness or rage is hearing signals from the reptilian brain. In her, man's latent perversity is manifest. All hell breaks loose. The hell of Chthonian nature that modern humanism denies and represses. In every premenstrual woman struggling to govern her temper, sky cult wars again with earth cult. Mythology's identification of woman with nature is correct. The male contribution to procreation is momentary and transient. Conception is a pinpoint of time, another of our phallic peaks of action, from which the male slides back uselessly. The pregnant woman is daemonically, devilishly complete. As an ontological entity, she needs nothing and no one. I shall maintain that the pregnant woman, brooding for 9 months upon her own creation, is the pattern of all solipsism, that the historical attribution of narcissism to women is another true myth. Male bonding and patriarchy were the recourse to which man was forced by his terrible sense of woman's power, her imperviousness, her archetypal confederacy with Chthonian nature. Woman's body is a labyrinth in which man is lost. It is a walled garden, the medieval hortus conclusus, in which nature works its daemonic sorcery. Woman is the primeval fabricator, the real first mover. She turns a gob of refuse into a spreading web of sentient being, floating on the snaky umbilical by which she leashes every man. Feminism has been simplistic in arguing that female archetypes were politically motivated falsehoods by men. The historical repugnance to woman has a rational basis. Disgust is reason's proper response to the grossness of procreative nature. Reason and logic are the anxiety-inspired domain of Apollo, premier god of sky cult. The Apollonian is harsh and phobic, coldly cutting itself off from nature by its superhuman purity. I shall argue that Western personality and Western achievements are, for better or worse, largely Apollonian. Apollo's great opponent, Dionysus, is ruler of the Chthonian, whose law is procreative femaleness. As we shall see, the Dionysian is liquid nature, a miasmic swamp, whose prototype is the still pond of the womb. We must ask whether the equivalence of male and female in Far Eastern symbolism was as culturally efficacious as the hierarchization of male over female has been in the West. Which system has ultimately benefited women more? Western science and industry have freed women from drudgery and danger. Machines do housework, the pill neutralizes fertility, giving birth is no longer fatal, and the Apollonian line of Western rationality has produced the modern aggressive woman who can think like a man and write obnoxious books. The tension and antagonism in Western metaphysics developed human higher cortical powers to great heights. Most of Western culture is a distortion of reality, but reality should be distorted, that is, imaginatively amended. The Buddhist acquiescence to nature is neither accurate about nature nor just to human potential. The Apollonian has taken us to the stars. Daemonic archetypes of woman, filling world mythology, represent the uncontrollable nearness of nature. Their tradition passes nearly unbroken from prehistoric idols through literature and art to modern movies. The primary image is the femme fatale, the woman fatal to man. The more nature is beaten back in the West, the more the femme fatale reappears as a return of the repressed. She is the specter of the West's bad conscience about nature. She is the moral ambiguity of nature, a malevolent moon that keeps breaking through our fog of hopeful sentiment. Feminism dismisses the femme fatale as a cartoon and libel. If she ever existed, she was simply a victim of society, resorting to destructive womanly wiles because of her lack of access to political power. The femme fatale was a career woman manquée, her energies neurotically diverted into the boudoir. By such techniques of demystification, feminism has painted itself into a corner. Sexuality is a murky realm of contradiction and ambivalence. It cannot always be understood by social models. Which feminism, as an heir of 19th century utilitarianism, insists on imposing on it, mystification will always remain the disorderly companion of love and art. Eroticism is mystique, that is, the aura of emotion and imagination around sex, it cannot be fixed by codes of social or moral convenience, whether from the political left or right. For nature's fascism is greater than that of any society. There is a demonic instability in sexual relations that we may have to accept. The femme fatale is one of the most mesmerizing of sexual personae. She is not a fiction, but an extrapolation of biologic realities in women that remain constant. The North American Indian myth of the toothed vagina, vagina dentata, is a gruesomely direct transcription of female power and male fear. Metaphorically, every vagina has secret teeth, for the male exits as less than when he entered. The basic mechanics of conception require action in the male, but nothing more than passive receptivity in the female. Sex is a natural rather than social transaction, therefore, really is a kind of drain of male energy by female fullness. Physical and spiritual castration is the danger every man runs in intercourse with a woman. Love is the spell by which he puts his sexual fear to sleep. Woman's latent vampirism is not a social aberration, but a development of her maternal function, for which nature has equipped her with tiresome thoroughness. For the male, every act of intercourse is a return to the mother and a capitulation to her. For men, sex is a struggle for identity. In sex, the male is consumed and released again by the toothed power that bore him, the female dragon of nature. The femme fatale was produced by the mystique of connection between mother and child. A modern assumption is that sex and procreation are medically, scientifically, intellectually manageable. If we keep tinkering with the social mechanism long enough, every difficulty will disappear. Meanwhile, the divorce rate soars. Conventional marriage, despite its inequities, kept the chaos of libido in check. When the prestige of marriage is low, all the nasty daemonism of sexual instinct pops out. Individualism, the self unconstrained by society, leads to the coarser servitude of constraint by nature. Every road from Rousseau leads to Sade. The mystique of our birth from human mothers is one of the demonic clouds we cannot dispel by tiny declarations of independence. Apollo can swerve from nature, but he cannot obliterate it. As emotional and sexual beings, we go full circle. Old age is a second childhood, in which earliest memories revive. Chillingly, comatose patients of any age automatically drift toward the fetal position, from which they have to be pried by nurses. We are tied to our birth by unshakable apparitions of sense memory. Rousseauist psychologies like feminism assert the ultimate benevolence of human emotion. In such a system, the femme fatale logically has no place. I follow Freud, Nietzsche, and Sade in my view of the amorality of the instinctual life. At some level, all love is combat, a wrestling with ghosts. We are only for something by being against something else. People who believe they are having pleasant, casual, uncomplex sexual encounters, whether with friend, spouse, or stranger, are blocking from consciousness the tangle of psychodynamics at work, just as they block the hostile clashings of their dream life. Family romance operates at all times. The femme fatale is one of the refinements of female narcissism, of the ambivalent self-directedness that is completed by the birth of a child, or by the conversion of spouse or lover into child. Mothers can be fatal to their sons. It is against the mother that men have erected their towering edifice of politics and sky cult. She is Medusa, in whom Freud saw the castrating and castrated female pubes. But Medusa's snaky hair is also the writhing vegetable growth of nature. Her hideous grimace is men's fear of the laughter of women. She that gives life also blocks the way to freedom. Therefore, I agree with Sade that we have the right to thwart nature's procreative compulsions through sodomy or abortion. Male homosexuality may be the most valorous of attempts to evade the femme fatale and to defeat nature by turning away from the Medusan mother, whether in honor or detestation of her. The male homosexual is one of the great foragers of absolutist Western identity. But of course, nature has won, as she always does, by making disease the price of promiscuous sex. The permanence of the femme fatale as a sexual persona is part of the weary weight of eroticism, beneath which both ethics and religion founder. Eroticism is society's soft point, through which it is invaded by Chthonian nature. The femme fatale can appear as Medusan mother or as frigid nymph, masking in the brilliant luminosity of Apollonian high glamour. Her cool unreachability beckons, fascinates, and destroys. She is not a neurotic, but if anything, a psychopath. That is, she has an amoral affectlessness, a serene indifference to the suffering of others, which she invites and dispassionately observes as tests of her power. The mystique of the femme fatale cannot be perfectly translated into male terms. I will speak at length of the beautiful boy, one of the West's most stunning sexual personae. However, the danger of the homme fatale, as embodied in today's boyish male hustler, is that he will leave, disappearing to other loves, other lands. He is a rambler, a cowboy and sailor. But the danger of the femme fatale is that she will stay, still, placid, and paralyzing. Her remaining is a demonic burden, the ubiquity of Walter Pater's Mona Lisa, whose mother's history, she is a thorny symbol of the perversity of sex. She will stick. We are moving in this chapter toward a theory of beauty. I believe that the aesthetic sense, like everything else thus far, is a swerve from the Chthonian. It is a displacement from one area of reality to another, analogous to the shift from earth cult to sky cult. Ferenczi speaks of the replacement of animal nose by human eye. Because of our upright stance, the eye is peremptory in its judgments. It decides what to see and why. Each of our glances is as much exclusion as inclusion. We select, editorialize, and enhance. Our idea of the pretty is a limited notion that cannot possibly apply to Earth's metamorphic underworld, a cataclysmic realm of Chthonian violence. We choose not to see this violence on our daily strolls. Every time we say nature is beautiful, we are saying a prayer, fingering our worry beads. The cool beauty of the femme fatale is another transformation of Chthonian ugliness. Female animals are usually less beautiful than males. The mother bird's dull feathers are camouflage, protecting the nest from predators. Male birds are creatures of spectacular display, of both plumage and parade, partly to impress females and conquer rivals, and partly to divert enemies from the nest. Among humans, male ritual display is just as extreme, but for the first time the female becomes a lavishly beautiful object. Why? The female is adorned not simply to increase her property value, as Marxism would demystifyingly have it, but to assure her desirability. Consciousness has made cowards of us all. Animals do not feel sexual fear because they are not rational beings. They operate under a pure biologic imperative. Mind, which has enabled humanity to adapt and flourish as a species, has also infinitely complicated our functioning as physical beings. We see too much, and so have to stringently limit our seeing. Desires besieged on all sides by anxiety and doubt, beauty and ecstasy of the eye, drugs us and allows us to act. Beauty is our Apollonian revision of the Chthonian. Nature is a Darwinian spectacle of the eaters and the eaten. All phases of procreation are ruled by appetite. Sexual intercourse, from kissing to penetration, consists of movements of barely controlled cruelty and consumption. The long pregnancy of the human female and the protracted childhood of her infant, who is not self-sustaining for 7 years or more, have produced the agon of psychological dependency that burdens the male for a lifetime. Man justifiably fears being devoured by woman, who is nature's proxy. Repression is an evolutionary adaptation, permitting us to function under the burden of our expanded consciousness. For what we are conscious of could drive us mad. Crude male slang speaks of female genitalia as slash or gash. Freud notes that Medusa turns men to stone because at first sight, a boy thinks female genitals a wound from which the penis has been cut. They are indeed a wound, but it is the infant who has been cut away by violence. The umbilical is a hawser sawed through by a social rescue party. Sexual necessity drives man back to that bloody scene, but he cannot approach it without tremors of apprehension. These he conceals by euphemisms of love and beauty. However, the less well-bred he is, that is, the less socialized, the sharper his sense of the animality of sex, and the grosser his language. The foul-mouthed roughneck is produced not by society's sexism, but by society's absence, for nature is the most foul-mouthed of us all. Woman's current advance in society is not a voyage from myth to truth, but from myth to new myth. The rise of rational, technological woman may demand the repression of unpleasant archetypal realities. Ferenczi remarks, the periodic pulsations in feminine sexuality, puberty, the menses, pregnancies, and parturitions, the climacterium, require a much more powerful repression on the woman's part than is necessary for the man. In its argument with male society, feminism must suppress the monthly evidence of woman's domination by Chthonian nature. Menstruation and childbirth are an affront to beauty and form. In aesthetic terms, they are spectacles of frightful squalor. Modern life, with its hospitals and paper products, has distanced and sanitized these primitive mysteries, just as it has done with death, which used to be a grueling at-home affair. An awful lot is being swept under the rug. The awe and terror, that is our lot. The wound-like rawness of female genitals is a symbol of the unredeemability of Chthonian nature. In aesthetic terms, female genitals are lurid in color, vagrant in contour, and architecturally incoherent. Male genitals, on the other hand, though they risk ludicrousness by their rubbery indecisiveness, a Sylvia Plath heroine memorably thinks of turkey neck and turkey gizzards, have a rational mathematical design, a syntax. There is no absolute virtue, however, since it may tend to confirm the male in his abundant misperceptions of reality. Aesthetics stop where sex begins. G. Wilson Knight declares all physical love is in its way a victory over physical secrecies and physical repulsions. Sex is sloppy, and untidy, a return to what Freud calls the infant's polymorphous perversity, a zestful rolling around in every body fluid. St. Augustine says, we are born between feces and urine. This misogynistic view of the infant's insane emergence from the birth canal is close to the Chthonian truth, but excretion, through which nature for once acts upon the sexes equally, can be saved by comedy, as we see in Aristophanes, Rabelais, Pope, and Joyce. Excretion has found a place in high culture. Menstruation and childbirth are too barbaric for comedy. Their ugliness has produced the giant displacement of woman's historical status as sex object, whose beauty is endlessly discussed and modified. Woman's beauty is a compromise with her dangerous archetypal allure. It gives the eye the comforting illusion of intellectual control over nature.